When an empath finally stops trying to please everyone and starts seeing the truth, something profound happens. Carl Jung noticed this again and again in his work. They don't become selfish, they become dangerous. Not dangerous to people, but dangerous to every system, relationship, and dynamic that survives by feeding on their endless self-sacrifice. Jung called this process individuation, and for an empath, it's one of the most disruptive transformations possible in a world that quietly expects them to give until they disappear. Picture the moment it begins. You're alone. Maybe it's late. Maybe you've just come home after another exhausting day of managing other people's moods, smoothing over conflicts, carrying emotional weight that was never yours to begin with. You said yes when every part of you wanted to say no. You smiled through discomfort just to keep the peace. You absorbed stress that wasn't yours until your body feels tense, wired, almost burning from the inside out. But this time, something interrupts the pattern. Instead of pushing through like you always do, you stop. You sit with the discomfort. And a quiet question rises up inside you, one that feels almost forbidden. What if I stopped? That single question is what Jung described as the beginning of consciousness. And for an empath who dares to ask it honestly, there's no going back. Because once you see the pattern clearly, you can't unsee it. The old innocence is gone. Here's the part Jung understood that almost no one talks about. The empath's ability to feel everything isn't always a gift. Often it's survival sensitivity, a finely tuned nervous system that learned early on to read the room, anticipate danger, and keep others calm in order to stay safe. What looks like compassion is often a trauma response that became your identity. Jung saw this pattern repeatedly. He wrote about people whose entire sense of worth was built around being needed. He warned that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But empaths struggle with this because they've never learned who they are without everyone else's emotions layered on top of them. And when awakening begins, it doesn't feel gentle. It feels like a collision. Jung called it a collision with the unconscious. A sudden, shocking realization that the self you've been living as was constructed around a lie. The lie that you are responsible for other people's feelings. The lie that your job is to regulate the emotional climate around you. The lie that love must be earned through self-erasure. Highly sensitive people, Jung observed, often develop what he called inflated compassion. They overextend empathy to avoid rejection. They become indispensable because being needed feels safer than being known. But when that structure cracks, when the bubble bursts, something extraordinary begins. The real self starts to emerge. This is where Jung's work becomes unsettling for empaths. Because buried beneath all that kindness, there's something else. Something you were never allowed to feel. The shadow. Jung said every person carries a shadow, the parts of ourselves we've suppressed, denied, or rejected to survive. And for empaths, the shadow often contains rage. Not cruelty, not malice, but raw, unfiltered anger at being used, overlooked, manipulated, and taken for granted. Jung wrote that enlightenment doesn't come from imagining light, but from making the darkness conscious. For empaths, that darkness isn't evil. It's unexpressed anger, unmet needs, a voice that learned it was safer to stay silent. And when an empath finally meets this shadow, everything changes. They don't become heartless, they become selective. They start seeing patterns they couldn't see before. Emotional manipulation becomes obvious. Manufactured crises stand out. They recognize the difference between genuine need and someone who's learned that distress is a way to control them. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. Jung noticed distinct shifts when sensitive people entered individuation, what I call the signs of conscious awakening. And if you recognize these, you're not broken. You're waking up. The first sign is an energy shift. For most of your life, your energy flowed outward. You gave first, last, and always. You scanned others constantly, adjusting yourself to keep things smooth, but now something reverses. Your energy starts coming back to you. Jung observed that when people stop unconsciously giving their life force away, they suddenly have energy for themselves. You notice it in small ways at first. You don't feel as drained after conversations. You stop absorbing bad moods like they're your responsibility. And most surprising of all, the guilt begins to loosen. You're no longer ashamed of having limits. Jung wrote that clarity comes when you look inward instead of constantly orienting yourself around the outside world. And here's the strange part. Other people notice this shift before you do. They feel it. They sense that you're no longer available to carry their emotional weight, and some of them will try to pull you back into the old role using guilt, disappointment, or subtle pressure. That's when the second sign appears. The mask starts to fall. Jung called this the death of the persona, the social mask we wear to survive and belong. For empaths, that mask is often the nice one, the agreeable one, the endlessly understanding one, the version of you that never makes waves. But once individuation begins, that mask becomes unbearable to wear. You start saying what you actually think instead of what's expected. You express preferences instead of deferring. You admit you're tired. You stop pretending you have unlimited emotional bandwidth. This phase unsettles people who benefited from your silence. Jung warned that accepting yourself fully is terrifying because it means letting go of who you were told to be. But for the awakening empath, self-acceptance slowly becomes more important than being liked. Then comes the third sign. Projection returns to its source. Jung taught that we project our inner qualities onto others. Empaths are especially prone to this. You assume others feel as deeply as you do. You see potential instead of reality. You excuse behavior because you believe everyone has the same inner world you do. But during awakening, that projection collapses. You stop imagining who someone could be and start seeing who they are. You stop explaining away harm. You stop believing that everyone is just misunderstood. And suddenly, patterns that once confused you make perfect sense. Jung wrote that what irritates us in others often points to something we've denied in ourselves. Many empaths are triggered by selfishness because they were never allowed healthy selfishness of their own. When that suppressed part returns, your tolerance for imbalance disappears, which leads to the fourth sign. Boundaries become non-negotiable. Jung observed that psychological maturity requires a personal relationship with the inner world. For empaths, this means learning to listen inward instead of responding automatically to external demands. You begin saying no without long explanations. You stop apologizing for having needs. And you recognize a painful truth. People who react badly to your boundaries were benefiting from your lack of them. This isn't cruelty. Jung called it integrity. You begin to understand something radical. Taking care of yourself isn't a betrayal of love. It's the foundation of it. And as this foundation solidifies, something else fades. The guilt. This is the fifth sign, and it shocks most empaths. The constant guilt for resting, for choosing yourself, for disappointing others starts to dissolve. Jung described this as shadow integration. When you stop rejecting parts of yourself, you stop punishing yourself for existing. You begin to see that much of your guilt was conditioned, a response to manipulation, a signal installed to keep you compliant. And when someone says you've changed with disappointment in their voice, you no longer rush to fix it. You think, yes, that's the point. At this stage, something irreversible has happened. Your sense of worth is no longer dependent on how useful you are to others. And from here on, the transformation only deepens. Because once an empath stops living for approval, authenticity takes over. And that's where things truly start to shift. When authenticity takes over, everything rearranges. This is the sixth sign Jung observed in the individuation process. Authenticity over approval. For empaths, this phase feels both liberating and destabilizing at the same time. You've spent your entire life monitoring reactions, adjusting tone, softening edges, editing yourself in real time to keep others comfortable. Now that internal censor goes quiet. You stop performing emotions you don't feel. You stop agreeing just to avoid tension. You stop laughing at jokes that don't land. And suddenly the room feels different. Jung described individuation as a movement away from external validation toward the inner center. For empaths, this means choosing truth over harmony, even when harmony used to feel like survival. Some people respond to this with respect. Others respond with discomfort, confusion, even hostility. They sense the shift before you ever explain it. This is where many empaths feel like they're losing people. But what's really happening is sorting. When you stop trying to be liked by everyone, you become genuinely magnetic to the right people. Jung understood that authenticity attracts alignment and repels exploitation. The awakening empath discovers what I call authentic magnetism. You no longer chase connection, you allow it. And the connections that remain feel different, quieter, deeper, mutual. Then comes the seventh sign. The healer turns inward. Jung famously spoke of the wounded healer, the person who learns to tend others because they never learned how to tend themselves. Empaths often fall into this role early. You learned how to read pain, soothe distress, and stabilize emotions because someone had to. But during individuation, that outward flow of care finally redirects. For the first time, you ask a question you were never taught to ask. What do I need? Instead of parenting everyone around you, you begin tending to your own inner child. Instead of fixing others' crises, you sit with your own unmet needs. This feels uncomfortable at first, even wrong. But Jung insisted that healing cannot happen without turning toward the self. You realize something sobering. You've been empty for a long time, and no amount of giving was ever going to fill you. As you reclaim your energy, the eighth sign emerges. Conscious connection. Jung called this conscious relationship, the ability to connect without losing yourself. The awakening empath learns to feel compassion without absorption. You no longer merge emotionally. You witness, you empathize, but you remain centered. You start attracting people who respect your boundaries instead of testing them. Relationships shift from one-sided giving to mutual exchange. You can love without rescuing, support without self-sacrifice, care without collapse. This is what Jung meant by differentiated consciousness. You stay rooted in yourself while remaining open to others, and paradoxically, this makes your relationships more genuine than ever before. But Jung never romanticized this stage. He called it the night sea journey, a descent before rebirth. For empaths, this period can feel like a psychological death. The old identity dissolves. The version of you that survived by pleasing others fades away. You may lose friendships that were built on your usefulness rather than mutual respect. You may feel lonely in a way you never have before. And grief surfaces. You grieve the relationships that weren't actually love, but dependence. You grieve the years you spent overgiving. You grieve the self you had to abandon to belong. Jung wrote that no tree can grow toward the sky unless its roots descend into darkness. The awakening empath must enter their inner underworld before they can rise into wholeness. This descent doesn't only affect the mind, it affects the body. Jung was one of the first psychologists to understand that the psyche and the body are inseparable. For empaths, years of emotional absorption often manifest physically. Chronic fatigue, anxiety, digestive issues, autoimmune conditions, a nervous system stuck in constant vigilance. When people-pleasing stops, something remarkable happens. The body begins to exhale, sleep improves, tension softens, chronic symptoms often ease. Not because nothing is wrong, but because the body is no longer carrying what never belonged to it. Your nervous system was never designed to process everyone else's emotional waste. When you stop being the world's emotional landfill, healing begins naturally. Individuation also reshapes your relationships in unavoidable ways. Jung observed that as consciousness increases, unconscious bonds dissolve. For empaths, this often looks like what I call the great relationship purge. Connections either deepen or fall away. There's very little in between. Those who genuinely love you adapt. They respect your boundaries, they celebrate your growth. Those who resist were often invested in your self-neglect. Jung described this as the difference between genuine love and neurotic attachment. Many relationships were built on an unspoken contract. You give endlessly. They offer conditional acceptance. When you break that contract by choosing yourself, some people leave. Let them. Because here's the truth Jung uncovered that changes everything. When empaths stop absorbing everyone's emotions, they don't lose sensitivity. They develop conscious sensitivity. You still feel deeply, but now you choose what enters your system. You can read situations accurately without drowning in them. You can help without depletion. Love without self-betrayal. Jung called this differentiated being, maintaining your center while engaging with the world. At this stage, something unexpected happens. Your presence changes others. Jung believed that individual transformation creates collective impact. When one person becomes conscious, it destabilizes unconscious dynamics around them. Your boundaries invite others to examine theirs. Your refusal to carry emotional burdens reminds people they're responsible for their own feelings. You become a mirror, not by preaching, not by fixing, but by being. Jung wrote that when two personalities meet, both are transformed, but only when one person shows up authentically. The awakening empath stops performing and starts being. And that alone is disruptive enough to spark change. But individuation also comes with responsibility. This is where many empaths feel confused. You want to help, you care deeply, but helping no longer looks like rescuing. Jung called this authentic service, helping from wholeness rather than woundedness. You stop chasing people who don't want to heal. You stop fixing problems that aren't yours. You stop absorbing pain to prove your worth. Instead, you become steady, present, boundaried. Like a lighthouse, you illuminate. You don't chase ships into storms. Jung's ultimate aim was what he called the self. Not the ego, not the persona, but the integrated totality of who you are. For empaths, reaching this stage means embracing paradox. You are sensitive and strong, caring and fierce, open and sovereign. You no longer apologize for feeling deeply. You no longer hide your intuition. You no longer flatten yourself to fit. You allow yourself to be complex. And this is where the journey matures into something even deeper. Because individuation doesn't end with withdrawal from the world. It ends with conscious return, and that's where everything finally comes together. Conscious return is where the awakening empath truly steps into their power. Jung understood that individuation was never about escaping the world. It was about re-entering it without losing yourself. You don't retreat forever. You come back differently. You return to relationships, work, and community not out of obligation but out of choice. You help because you feel called, not because you feel guilty. You engage because you desire connection, not because you fear rejection. Your sensitivity is no longer a liability. It's guided, directed, contained. Jung called this conscious participation, living from your center rather than your conditioning. For empaths, this is unfamiliar territory. For most of your life, your worth was measured by how much you gave, how much you endured, how much you carried without complaint. Now your worth is intrinsic. It exists even when you do nothing for anyone else. And that changes everything. Jung was clear that psychological development is not linear. It moves in cycles. The awakening empath will be tested again and again. Old patterns will try to reassert themselves. Guilt will whisper. The urge to rescue will return in moments of vulnerability. But each cycle happens at a deeper level. Each time you choose yourself, the next choice becomes easier. Jung described this as spiral development. You revisit familiar themes but from a higher vantage point. What once overwhelmed you now simply informs you. What once consumed you now passes through. This is how sovereignty stabilizes. And with sovereignty comes a new kind of responsibility. Jung believed that when people heal themselves, they naturally influence others. But the conscious empath's role is not to save, it's to model. Instead of absorbing pain, you hold space. Instead of fixing problems, you trust others to meet themselves. Instead of sacrificing your truth, you speak it calmly and clearly. This is authentic service. You help from wholeness, not from wounds. You stop being the emotional emergency room. You become an example of emotional regulation, self-respect, and inner authority. People who are ready will feel drawn to you. People who are not will feel uncomfortable. That's not your problem. Jung understood that systems built on unconsciousness resist individuation. When empaths stop people-pleasing, they often get labeled as selfish, cold, or changed. But Jung made a critical distinction between unhealthy selfishness and healthy selfishness. Unhealthy selfishness is avoiding responsibility. Healthy selfishness is taking responsibility for your own life. It means boundaries instead of walls, self-care instead of self-abandonment, choice instead of compulsion. Most empaths have never practiced healthy selfishness. They were taught that caring meant disappearing. Individuation corrects that lie. Jung's work also emphasized the integration of opposites. He called it the inner marriage, the union of masculine and feminine psychological principles. For empaths, this integration is transformative. You balance receptivity with assertiveness, compassion with clarity, softness with strength. You learn to receive as well as give, to say no as confidently as yes, to stand alone without feeling abandoned. This is psychological wholeness. You no longer need to be completed by others because you've learned to inhabit yourself fully. As this integration deepens, something remarkable emerges. What I call the empath's arsenal. Gifts that were always there but clouded by emotional overload. Your intuition becomes precise instead of overwhelming. Your creativity flows because your energy is no longer drained. Your relationships deepen because they're based on truth, not performance. Jung wrote that vision becomes clear when you look into your own heart. The conscious empath develops vision that cuts through pretense and sees reality as it is without distortion. There is, however, a phase Jung spoke about that many empaths misunderstand: loneliness. As you separate from unconscious dynamics, solitude becomes unavoidable. You've spent much of your life surrounded by people who needed you. When that need disappears, silence rushes in. But Jung made an important distinction. Loneliness is the pain of disconnection. Solitude is the peace of self-connection. At first, the difference feels subtle, then it becomes profound. In solitude, you hear your own thoughts without interference. You discover preferences you never had space to explore. You meet yourself without mirrors, roles, or expectations. Many empaths have never truly met themselves. This is where identity forms, not the identity of caretaker, not the identity of fixer, but the identity of a whole human being. Jung's individuation process always leads back to engagement with life, but from a new foundation. The awakening empath returns to the world with discernment. You choose where to invest energy. You choose who has access to you. You choose when to give and when to rest. You no longer confuse endurance with love. And here's the quiet truth. The world does not need more depleted empaths. It needs conscious ones. Empaths who give from overflow, not emptiness. Who help from inspiration, not guilt. Who love without abandoning themselves. Jung believed that consciousness spreads through example, not force. When you live this way, you give others permission to question their own patterns. Your boundaries become a blueprint. Your self-respect becomes contagious. This is why individuation is revolutionary, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply destabilizing to systems that rely on unconscious sacrifice. Jung outlined principles that individuated people naturally live by. What I call the conscious empath's code. Feel everything, absorb nothing, give from abundance, never depletion. Love deeply without losing yourself. Help when inspired, not when pressured. Trust your inner knowing over external demands. These aren't rules, they're natural consequences of awakening. Jung knew that society often punishes those who individuate. Independent people are harder to control. Sovereign individuals don't respond well to guilt, fear, or manipulation. That's why conscious empaths are often misunderstood. But Jung was unwavering on this point. Becoming who you truly are is not selfish, it's necessary. Individuation also integrates the parts of you that once felt contradictory. You realize you can be gentle and unyielding, empathic and boundaried, open-hearted and self-protective. You stop apologizing for your depth. You stop shrinking your presence. You stop negotiating your worth. Jung's concept of the self is the integrated totality of who you are, not who you perform as, not who you were trained to be, but who you are when nothing is being asked of you. The integrated empath stands firmly in that self, and from there everything aligns. So understand this. Your sensitivity was never a flaw. Your boundaries are not betrayals. Your authenticity is not too much. Your breaking point was not failure. It was initiation. Jung spent his life mapping the journey from fragmentation to wholeness, and he made one thing clear. This path requires courage, the courage to disappoint others instead of abandoning yourself, the courage to stand alone when necessary, the courage to choose truth over comfort. If you recognize yourself in this journey, you are already walking the path Jung described over a century ago. Trust it. Trust your instincts. Trust the discomfort. Trust the clarity that's emerging. When an empath stops pleasing everyone and starts seeing the truth, they don't lose their compassion. They finally include themselves in it. They don't stop caring about others. They stop abandoning themselves. They don't become selfish. They become sovereign. And that is Jung's gift to every empath who is tired of carrying the world's pain as proof of their goodness. You don't have to suffer to be worthy. You don't have to disappear to be loved. You can be sensitive and strong, caring and boundaried, empathic and free. Your journey from people pleaser to conscious empath is not just personal. It's revolutionary, and Jung would be proud. Thanks for walking this path with me. I'll see you in the next dimension.